Hello, I'm going to read from my favourite author, Terry Pratchett, and this is his very last novel that he wrote before he died. It's called The Shepherd's Crown, and it's about Tiffany Aching, who has been a witch since the age of 9. She is nobly assisted in all her endeavours by a large clan of very small blue men, known as the Wee Free Men. It's a wonderful excuse for some truly unforgivable accents, for which I do not apologise. Chapter 12. An Elf Among the Feagles. Up on the downs, the Feagle Mound was still its usual hive of activity and song, a Feagle Mound being very like a beehive, but without the honey. And to be sure, a Feagle could sting much worse than a bee. But when something was being celebrated, and they didn't need much to pick a reason for celebration, the Feagles always made sure that it went on happily for a very long time. A short time past midnight, however, the revels that night were interrupted by Big Jan, the Feagle night watchman, as he ran in from the storm raging outside. He kicked the helmet of his chief, the big man of the clan, and shouted, "There's elves here! I can smell it, ye ken!" And from every hole in turn, the clan of the Feagle poured out in their hundreds to deal with the ancient enemy, waving claymores and swords, yodeling their war cries. "Ach, stick it, ye trackens! Feagle wa hey! Go away with ye, ye bogle! Gie ye such a good kicking! Nae king, nae queen, we will nae be fooled again!" There is a concept known as a hustle and bustle, and the Feagles were very good at it, cheerfully getting in one another's way in the drive to be first into battle. And it seemed as if each small warrior had a battle cry of his own, and he was very ready to fight anyone who tried to take it away from him. "How many elves?" asked Rob Anybody, trying to adjust his spog. There was a pause. "1," said Big Jan sheepishly. "Are you sure?" said Rob Anybody, as his sons and brothers flowed past him and hurried past to the mouth of the mound. Ugh, the embarrassment. The whole Feagle colony bristling with weaponry, full of alcohol and bravado, and apparently nothing to do with it. Of course, they were always itching for a fight, but most Feagles itched all the time, especially in the spog. They rushed about on the sodden hilltop, looking for the enemy, while Big Jan led Rob to a dew pond on the top of the hill. The storm had passed and the water gleamed under the stars. There, half in, half out of the pond, the battered body of an elf lay groaning. And indeed it was, apparently, a solitary elf. You could almost hear the Feagles thinking, "One elf?" Feagles loved a good spat with the elves, but just one? How did that happen? "Ugh, crevens, that's a long time since we had a really good fight," Rob sighed, and for a moment he was, for a Feagle, quite sombre. "Aye, but where there's one, there's sure to be a plague of them," Big Jan muttered. Rob sniffed at the air. The elf just lay there, and it was doing nothing. "There are nae other elves aboot. Would smell them if there were," he pronounced. He reached a decision. "Big Jan, ye and wee dangerous Spike, grab a hold of that scunner. You know what to do if it gets feisty. Awfully wee Billy Big Chin," he looked down for the clan Gonigal, who was least likely to mangle the facts. "Hie away with ye to the kelder and tell her what's abroad. What we are bringing back to the mound." Then he shouted so that the rest of the clan could hear him. "This elf is our prisoner, a hostage, ye ken. That means ye are nae to kill it until ye are told." He ignored the grumbles from the clan. "As to the rest of ye, take guard around yon stones, and if they come in force, show them what the Feagles can do." Daft Woolly said, "I can play the harmonica." Rob Anybody sighed. "Aye, well, I suppose that puts the Woolies up me, so would likely keep them away or not." Back at the mound, outside, mind, for no elf would find itself a place for long inside a Feagle mound, the kelder looked at the stricken elf, and then back at Rob Anybody. "Just one?" she asked. "Well, one elf alone is nae challenge to a young Feagle even." and this elf has been beaten, aye. Its wings torn from its back. Did our boys do that? No, us, Jeanie, said Rob. Big Jan said it dropped out the sky into the old dew pond up by stones, you ken. At a battle like that afore it got there. He looked anxiously at his wife, who had a frown on her face. You be warriors, not butchers, Jenny. The lads are raring to gae across, and if yon elf was facing me in a fight, my claymore would ring aloud. But when it looks like a wee slunket mopey, there's nae honour in killing it. Brawly spoken, Rob, said the Kelder, as she considered the unconscious creature. But why just one? Are you sure? There was a groan from the elf, and it stirred. Rob's claymore leaped into his hand, but the Kelder gently held him back. The bedraggled elf groaned again and whispered something, its voice weak and faltering. The Kelder pricked up her ears and listened carefully before turning to her husband with some surprise. "That said, thunder and lightning," she said. The elf whispered again. This time Rob could hear the words too. Thunder and lightning. Everyone on the chalk knew about Granny Aching's famous dogs, Thunder and Lightning, long gone, but still, as the local farmers believed, roaming the hills in spirit. Several years before, young Tiffany Aching had summoned them to help rid the chalk of the Queen of Fairyland. Now here was an elf, at the very entrance to a feegle mound, invoking their names. "There's something I dinna like about this," said the Kelder, "but I canna decide what it means without our hag. Can you send for her, Rob?" "Aye, Hamish can gae. I mun get back to the stones and the clan." He looked at his wife anxiously. "Will you be all rest here with the scunner?" "Aye, I'll take it inside, you ken, to dry by the fire. I's too weak to do anything to me, and the boys can look after me." Jeanie nodded over at the happy bundle of young Feagles who were tumbling out of the mound, waving their crescent-shaped clubs in the air. "Aye, it'll be good practice for them," Rob said, looking at them proudly. And then he ducked as one of the Feagles let loose his club, and it shot through the air and nearly smacked him on the ear. To his amazement, the weapon swung around in the air and shot back to the young Feagle who had hurled it, giving him a bang on the head, saving Rob the trouble. "Ach, boys!" Rob shouts. "It fights you back. Now that's a weapon fit for any Feagle. Double the fun, you ken." Tiffany had just begun to dress when there was a whistling sound outside, followed by the thump of something falling past, merrily breaking branches, and then there was a tapping on the window. She opened the window, and she could see a tangle of cotton and cloth down below, which, after a good kicking, fell away to reveal Hamish, the Feagle aviator. Hamish's trained buzzard Morag did the actual flying, of course. Mastering the art of flying wasn't a problem for Hamish. Landings were another matter. With the window open, it was suddenly very cold in the bedroom, and Tiffany sighed and said, "Yes, Hamish, now tell me what you need me for." Hamish, adjusting his goggles, jumped up onto the sill and into the room. "Our Kelder has sent for ye, Hag of the Hills. I mun get to ye to the mound as soon as you can." It had been a long day, but Tiffany knew that if the Kelder wanted her, even after midnight, then that was where she needed to be. So she put her heavy-duty travelling pants on, left a saucer of milk on the hearth, and cranked up the broomstick. And once again, you was staring at her, the white cat who seemed now to be everywhere. The fire inside the mound was like a furnace. The young Feagles, who had been left to guard their Kelder, were all scowling at the hated adversary. When Rob anybody returned, each Feagle wanted to look like he had been the one to keep the scunner from causing any trouble, especially now that she was inside the mound. But the elf appeared to have been crying. The Kelder shifted her bulk and said softly, "No, elf, you're come to me. For what purpose? Why do we nae kill you right now?" This caused a susurration of expectation among the Feagles, each of whom was hoping to kill an elf before too long, and trepidation on the part of the elf. The Kelder turned away, then said softly, I have the secrets of the Hiddlins, and what I see is that everything we do today was ordained afore the seas were made. There is nae turning back, but there is a mist in what is afore me. I canna see for sure beyond this day, ye ken. There was a shiver from the elf. Head your tongue richt, new elf, Janie mused, for I wonder what my position were to be if things were otherwise. Your people are sae inventive. This caused the young Feegles to brandish their weapons playfully, and the Kelder turned back to the elf and went on. Ye are sent to me by the calling of thunder and lightning. I ken those twa spirit dogs, aye, and also their owner will be with us soon enough. Right now, shivering elf, tell me what is the gaze you are under? Why are ye here? Who are ye? What is your name? And dinna lie to me, elf, because I have a way of kenning. Kelder looked at the elf, tiny shriveled rags and drying blood, something that could have been kicked about for days before being left to end its life in a dew pond. I can't ask you for anything, Kelder. I am empty to your pleasure or your wrath. The elf's voice was very small. But I was, until just now, the queen of the elves. The young Feegles stopped rattling their weapons and began to crowd nearer. Could this wee little mopey be the fearsome Quinn that they had heard so much about from the big man? Wee Doggy Bignose leaned over and bravely poked the elf with his finger, the effect slightly spoiled by his rabbit skull helmet falling over his eyes and making him reel forwards as it stuck on his nose. Get away with you, lads, said the Kelder sharply, rapping Doggy's helmet with her fist and spinning him away from the elf. She turned back to the Queen. Dryly she said, Then it appears ye had a misfortune, your Majesty, and I've a mind to mention that there appear to be many queens of the elves. I ask myself, which one do we have here? What I want is your name, madam. Be careful. If you should give me a name which isn't yours, your Majesty will find me somewhat acerbic. The elf said, My name, Kelder, is Nightshade. The Kelder sent a sideways look to rob anybody that said, What have we here? The real queen. For she knew that although there were many leaders among the elves of Fairyland, there had always been only one king and one queen. The king, of course, had gone away some years ago, creating a separate world just for himself and his pleasures, leaving the queen behind. And although it was rarely used, the queen did have a name of her own, a name known to the Feegles from their time in Fairyland, a name now to be passed from each Kelder to her successor, the name of Nightshade. Quietly she said, We are the Knack McFeegle, and we dinna bow down to queens. Rob Anybody was silent, but the sound of him whetting his claymore against the stone was a song, an invitation to death. Then he looked up, and his gaze was fearsome. We are the Knack McFeegle, the wee free men, nae king, nae queen, nae laird, nae master. We will nae be fooled again, he thundered. Your life, elf, is on the edge of my blade. There was a scuffling noise behind them, and Tiffany crawled in, followed by Hamish, with more Feegles pushing around after them. It's happy I am to see ye, Hag o' the Hills, Jeanie said. We have ourselves an elf. Tell us, what shall we do with it? And at that word elf, every weapon sang. Tiffany looked at the elf. It was in terrible shape, and she said, We aren't the kind of people who kill those who are unarmed. Rob Anybody put up his hand. Excuse me, mistress, but some of us do, or are. Nonplussed, Tiffany thought, Well, I'm their big wee hag, and the Kelder has asked for my help. And then, despite its bedraggled state, she recognised the Feegle's captive. After all, how could she have forgotten? I know you, elf, and I told you never to come here again, she frowned. You remember, you were a great elvish queen, and I was a little girl. I drove you away with thunder and lightning." She watched the elf's face when she said that. It had gone white. "Yes," said the elf faintly. "We came raiding into your world, but this was before the time of iron." Her face twisted with fear, and Tiffany sensed a change in the world, a feeling that she stood between two courses of action. What she did next would matter. This, she realized, was what she had suspected was coming her way, what Jeannie had warned her about. A witch is always on edge, between the light and the dark, the good and the bad, making choices every day, judging all the time. It was what made her human. But what was it that made an elf? She wondered. "I hear that the goblins believe that the railway engines have a soul, elf," she said softly. "Tell me, what kind of soul have you? Do you run along your own elvish rails, with no time or place for turning?" She looked at the Kelder and said, "Granny Aching told me to feed them that was starving, and clothe them that is naked, and help the pitiful. Well, this elf has come to my turf, starving, naked, pitiful. Do you see?" The Kelder's eyebrows rose. "Yon creature is an elf," she said. "It hasna care for ye. It hasna care for anyone. It doesn't even care for other elves." "You think there is no such animal as a good elf?" "You think there is such a thing as a good elf?" "No, I am suggesting that there is the possibility that there might be one." Tiffany turned to the cowering elf. "You are no queen now. Do you have a name?" "Nightshade, my lady." "Aye," said the Kelder, "a poison." "A word," said Tiffany sharply. "Well, yon word has been kicked out of life, as was nae more than a game of chess. And now it turns to the lassie she tried to destroy years ago," the Kelder said. "She'd been beaten severely, but here she comes to your steading, asking ye for sanctuary." There was a gleam in her eye as she said, "What now, Tiffin? It's up to ye. Only ye can decide. This elf nearly killed ye afore, and yet ye want to help her." The Kelder's face looked grave. "There is a nae to be trusted. We Nack McFeegle ken that. But ye are the girl who made the wintersmith mind his manners. Don't fret for the queen, but through her footsteps there may be a war." Tiffany bent down to the shrunken, quivering elf. Face to face with her, she quietly said, "Last time we met, Nightshade, I was a small girl, hardly capable of any magic whatsoever." She pushed her face closer. "How much better am I at magic now? I am the successor of Granny Weatherwax. Aye, and you elves were right to fear her name. And now you might say that the life of elves is hanging on you. And if you let me down, I will send you back to the Feegles. They have no love for elves." The Kelder caught her eye, and Tiffany said, "Does that sit well with you, Kelder?" "Och, weel," said the Kelder. "Somebody had to taste the first snail." "Yes," said Tiffany. "Goblins were treated as nobodies until somebody gave a thought to them. Give the Lady Nightshade no reason to hate you, but if she breaks the rules, then I promise ye, and ye ken well, a promise from the Hag of the Hills is serious business indeed. That will be the end of it." Eagle Eyes was still watching Nightshade with unabashed loathing. It seemed to Tiffany that the air between them and the elf was humming with hatred in both directions. Rob Anybody said, "You elf, you know that your kind will nae trick us again, and so it is for the sake of Mistress Aching that we are letting you live. But be told, the Hag of the Hills gets a bit restive when she sees us killing people, and if she wasn't here, you'd be bleeding again." There was a chorus of threats from the Feegles. It was clear that if they had their preference, Nightshade would now be nothing more than a damp little piece of flesh on the floor. Rob Anybody smashed his claymore against the ground. "Listen to the big wee hag, ye skinners! Aye, ye wee clonker and wee slogum, wee fungus and wee gimme jimmy. She's made a truce with the old queen, believing yon schemie might have a wee passel of goodness in her. Big Yan coughed and said, I dinna want to gainsay the hag, but the only good elf is a dead elf. I suggest you dinna take that road, brother. As a Gonigal, I say to leave space for goodness to get in. As it was in the way of bad King Johnny, said the Gonigal, awfully wee Billy Big Chin, an educated Feegle. Is that the manny who balanced a thimble on his nib for a week and afterwards had a wonderful singing voice? Asked Daft Willie. Nay, you dafty. Are you getting all het up about this? Then you fash yourself. The first time yon elf touches a body, it'll be a dead elf, and that's the way to find out, said wee Dangerous Spike. Well now, said Rob Anybody, this is what the hag wants, and I tell ye, that's the end of it. He's an absolutely fantastic author, has written lots and lots of books for children. Look him up, give him a go. Hope you enjoyed that. Another story soon.